I wonder if you can guess which colour we're going to be looking at today. And yes, this is the colour that reminds me of spring and summer and is a lovely warm hue. So today we are going to be looking at pink. Hi everyone, Jane here. Thank you so much for watching my video today, and welcome back if you are a returning viewer, and welcome if you are new today. So I'm continuing on with the colour studies, and today I'm going to be looking at the colour pink. A nice variety of pink products within my stash, but I've sort of gone for a more limited number this time. Sometimes I've gone quite mad with the amount of products, so I thought we'd stick to 12 this time. And I'm going to be doing some swatching in real time on my flowery swatch chart here, and then I'm going to be completing a project in time lapse over on this side. So if you are not interested in the swatching, or you want to come back at a later time to watch the actual video, I will insert on the screen about now the time when the actual project will start, so you can always fast forward to that part. But I do enjoy this part. I enjoy the swatching out of the products, and I like to do this in a mixed media way because it's really interesting to see how different products work. So I know that a lot of the times with my different colour studies, which you can find in a playlist on my channel if you want to go back and watch any of the other colour studies, I can tend to use the same sorts of mediums. That's because those are the mediums I mostly have, but I do think it's interesting to see the different shades, the different tones, and the different ways that products react. So I have done a flower because I thought, why not? The swatches aren't huge because I did want to fit them all into this nice pretty way, which is why I've then written my products around the edge. I started off writing down here, and I was going in and I just went round, and so it means the ones at the top are actually upside down but I can just about read what they say, and hopefully you will be able to get what they are too. So I'm going to start off at the top just because it's there, and the first one I've written down is the Ecoline brush marker, which is this. It's a watercolor marker, and this one is magenta, so it's a brighter color. I'm going to get some water, and I need a brush. That would help. Let's go with this one. So this, I'm going to, each time I'm going to talk as though it's the first time you might have seen these mediums, because I'm sure that every time there's going to be somebody new coming into these videos, so I apologize if it's a bit repetitive for some. So this is the Magenta Ecoline brush marker, which is a watercolor marker, but you can use it as a normal pen. I always feel weird calling things a normal pen or a normal pen, but you know what I mean, as you would just take a pen and color with a pen. But you can also water it out. The other thing you can do is, if you don't like the look you get, sometimes you get a bit of a line going on because it can be a little bit tricky to get it to water out totally, is you can put the pen onto another surface and lift it as if it was a watercolor. But I do love that magenta. That is so beautiful. I never know whether magenta is totally a pink or whether it's more of a red, but I classed it as a pink. So the next one along is the Steadtler Pigment pen. Now this is a new medium to my stash. I have recently just bought one set of these pigment art pens from Steadtler, and I bought the pastel colours because that's the sort of set that I don't have. Now I was thinking, because I'd seen some videos, that they might be a little bit similar to the Pitt Artist pen, because they're a pigment based pen, and so they are light fast. They've got good light fastness, and they work differently to a water based pen. So I'm just thought just to try these ones out, and I went for the pastels because, as I say, that's the sort of area I'm sort of more lacking in. So I thought if I'm going to try them out on anything, now because they are a pigment pen and they're not a water-based pen, it means that you can put colour things with them, and then you can use your water watery products over the top, and it's not going to move the colour. And that's what I like about the Pick pens. So that's why I thought they might be quite an interesting pen to try. That's gone down really nicely actually on there. But I will be using those as a whole set at some point in a video as well. Next one is Pan Pastel. Do like my Pan Pastels now. I still do need to use them more. So this one is Magenta Tint. Now in the Pan Pastels you get like the base colour, and then you'll get another one that's a tint, so that's it with white, and then you'll get another one that's a shade, I think it is, which is a darker version. So this is the lighter version. So this is basically magenta with white added, and they are super soft. They are, I like them because they're not as dusty as normal pastels. Normal pastels aren't really my thing. I'm trying to get more into these Pan Pastels, and we will use them in the project today. But just in those three colours there, you see how they are very different. So this one's got, I would say, more of a purple leaning sort of tint to it. And you can use these soft tools that I don't know who makes them, because these was when these are now made by Golden. I don't think they used to be. They weren't when I bought them so long ago. So I'm not sure. Let me just give that a little blow. There we go. The next one is the Tempera paint stick. And these are such fun. Now I do have pink in more of a pastel. I have pink in more of a sort of, I think that was one we used for the coral. It might not have been actually. That might have been the coral one I did. Not sure. But you can see how you get different. But I thought I would go with the brighter one for this. So Tempera paint stick is sort of like a gouache in a stick. It's made for children, so I only use these for fun in my sketchbooks and in my art journaling. You're not going to get anything super, you know, fine out them. They're great for mark making or laying down colour. Let me see. I think you can, from what I remember, you can get a little bit of water reactiveness out of them as well. So let's just fill that in a little bit. But they are good fun, and they dry, which is something that oil pastels do not do until you fix them. So they are, if you like the look to an extent of oil pastels, you're not going to get the same amount of workability by any stretch, but you don't want that permanently staying wet and you want to just do something that dries quick, then these are a cheap, fun alternative. They are not, you know, meant for fine art or things you're going to sell. So the next one I've got is the Archival ink pad. I've picked out Vibrant Fuchsia. So let's go with, well, I'm going to have to do it like that. So we'll do a couple of layers of that, and let's get a little stamp. Oh, just go for the same ones I always go for, so I'm keeping it consistent. So this is from my Make a Mark set, just so we've got a solidish stamp, and then we'll go on there. So Archival is a permanent ink, so it's brilliant. I love them for art journaling, I have to say, because you can put them down, then if you then think, oh, I need to put something else water-based over the top, you know those lines are not going to move. You can get the little mini ones in so many different colours, so it gives you a nice sort of range. So there we go. So that's the Vibrant Fuchsia. My fuchsia bush that I planted last year, I planted two. One didn't make it through the winter. The other one is now tiny and it's getting a little flower on it. So fuchsias are one thing that I can actually just about manage to grow usually. IndigoBlu matte acrylic. So I thought we have to have some matte acrylic or some acrylic paint to go on our project. So this is IndigoBlu and it's a matte version and it's pink ice gem, and it may seem like it's a very small pot, but they are very, very concentrated. So see how thick that is. So they are brilliant, for they do last quite a while. Let me find, let's get this little brush and we'll just take a little bit out and we'll go. And I wanted this one because it's a really nice sort of but it is, as it says, you know, it's the colour of the top of an iced gem biscuit. I hope everybody has ice gems where they are. I don't know. I know in the UK everybody will know what I mean. It's like a little biscuit. If it just, I'm just telling you in case you don't have ice. It's a biscuit, and then they have like this really hard icing on the top in the little swirl, and they're like pastel-y colours, and this is, you know, the colour of the pink ones. So there we go. So that's that. Now let's pop that in the water. Oh, shouldn't have popped it in that water. Let's pop it in the other water. Right, the next one is the Arrtx acrylic brush pen, and I've gone for this sort of mid, quite pale but sort of mid pink, and these all have numbers, not names. This is number 42. This is great for then adding on your extra accents onto your work, and because again it's an acrylic marker, so it goes over lots of different surfaces and it will dry permanent because it is acrylic. So there we go. Oh, I like that. It's a nice colour. What's the next one? Daniel Smith watercolour. So that's this one I picked out is the Quinacridone Rose. So I went with this one because it is, I think rose is just quintessentially is pink. Now this is quite a dark pink. I do also have rose of ultramarine, but that sort of splits with the blue and purples, and I wanted it to be more of a straightforward pink. So this is like a really sort of watercolour, I would say, if that makes any sense. The next one, Distress Crayon. So we've got, I couldn't have pinks without picked raspberry. Of the distress colours, picked raspberry is one of my most used, which is ironic because I don't have a lot of pink in my house. I don't have a lot of pink in clothing, but I like pink in art and craft. I like the colour. It's not a colour I choose to wear. Now, this is a water soluble wax crayon, basically, a bit like a gelato or a Neocolor 2, that sort of idea. So you can lay them down just as a crayon, or you can, as with so many of these products, you can add water and water it out. So I'll just add a bit of water, I won't water it all out. There you go. And I do find that these work at their best if you put a coat of gesso down to act as a primer. It helps them to slide around a lot better. Now the next one is the Faber Castell Polychromos pencil, and I have gone with Rose Carmine. I do love the Polychromos. They're a harder pencil, so they're not as blendable as things like your Prismacolors. I can't personally get along with Prismacolor. I think I'm too heavy-handed. I break them when I sharpen them, I break them when I use them. So for me, I need something that is a little bit more robust. And these lay down really nicely. You can blend them, you know, just as you can with all pencils. I tend to use my pencils more over the top of another medium, so either over the top of an alcohol marker colouring base, so put down a base of alcohol marker or a base of watercolour, and then use my pencils over the top, because I do find I struggle with my thumbs and my hands a little bit now because of years of crafting and arting, but I find, so using pencils I do find is quite hard on your hands. So to put down your watercolour first is actually a nicer way, because watercolour I find is, alcohol markers I'm sort of in the same boat, it's quite, you know, intensive on your hands, but watercolouring is quite gentle on my hands, so that's why I've probably moved more towards watercolour than anything else. So the next one is another pencil, but this time it's the Stabilo Woody. Now this does not have a name. I don't even know. It's got stars. I don't know if that's for light fasteners. I haven't overly looked. I always see them more as a fun thing, again, that I use within my sketchbooks and my art journaling. And so again, they work as a normal pencil. They're very waxy feeling, and they are called a Stabilo. They're a Stabilo Woody, which is like the Stabilo all pencils in that they go over lots of different surfaces, so you can draw onto glass and things like that. which means that you do need to be a bit careful. If you're just going to leave them as the pencil, if you try and put other things over the top, it can, I have ruined an acrylic pen by doing that. But you can also water them out, so that's another you know, good point of these. And they, if I use these, I tend to use them towards the end of a project so that I'm not going to be putting things over the top. And finally, I'm just going to get that water off there. I've got a medium that I actually use a lot in my videos, and I don't think I've actually used in any of these colour studies as of yet. And this is one of the Kuretake Gansai Tambi paints that are, they are a watercolour, but they're a Japanese style watercolour, so they are a lot thicker, a lot more opaque. They have a different sort of consistency. I really love them. I think if you go into them with the idea they're not going to be like your normal, I say normal as in Western watercolours, they are a different sort of watercolour, then and you take them for what they are, then you will probably find that you do really enjoy them. I love the big pans because you can really get a big brush in and really do some washes with them. And I like the consistency. I think it's a bit different. Now I chose this colour because it is Potter's Pink, which I always feel is a lot more of a dusky, almost leaning towards a brown kind of pink, which is a little bit different to the other pinks. Now you might be able to see when I'm putting that down, like when I put the Daniel Smith down, that's very, you know, much, you got that transparency. This, as you go over the line, you can see that it is whiting out that line slightly, so you can see. And if you go put it on thicker, you get that sort of more opaque look. If you water it out, you'll get that more watery colour look. But they are a watercolour. But that, I do like that colour. It's not always my favourite colour, but in the Gansai Tambi, I do actually really rather like that Potter's Pink. It's not my favourite colour always, but it is in this one. So whether that's because it's different to other Potter's Pinks or not, I do not know. So here is the swatch. What I will do is I will take a picture of that, and then at the end of the video I will have it as a still so that you can see what all the mediums are. But I will move on to do an art journal page on this side, and I will time lapse that, so I will speed it up. I will do a voiceover for that one, and then hopefully you will stick around to the end to see all of that. If you have enjoyed so far, do please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're not already subscribed, if you think that this is the sort of content you like to see. And hopefully you'll stick around, and I'll see you again soon. Okay, so I've decided to begin with the pan pastels, and I'm just using the soft tool to add some sort of shapes to the page. I've decided to go with some blocks of colour to start with, and then I'll add in other things, but I wanted to just sort of give this page a little bit of structure. So the pan pastel is really lovely. I'm going over sort of areas just to make sure that I fill in any gaps that I leave, and then I'm going in with the Gansai Tambi. So I'm not worried about if I go over the pan pastel. It's quite interesting actually to see the sort of effects you get when you put different mediums over the top of each other. And it sort of doesn't, the pan pastel doesn't really sort of, I can't think of what the word is, it doesn't soluble, it doesn't seem overly soluble, but I think it is. I think most pastels are a little bit soluble, but it sort of stays in place and keeps that sort of shadow underneath. And then for the third sort of medium on this part, I'm just adding in some of the Daniel Smith watercolour, and it makes a really nice contrast against those other two. Now once I'd let that dry, I realised that it sort of had left these areas that I thought would make nice almost frames within the page. So I found this stencil. I can't quite remember exactly. I think it was a France Papillon stencil. I don't think it's one that's available anymore, but it's sort of like wonky squares. But I mean, you could use a square stencil or a ruler or anything to do this, and I'm just using the Polychrome pencil just to add those frames in. Then I thought, oh, now I've made the frames, I could add a little bit of extra colour into them as well. So I'm using the Distress Crayon. Now, when I put the Distress Crayon down, I don't know whether I just didn't put enough of the medium down, but it sort of left a bit of a mark where I'd put it down. I realised afterwards as well that I am getting right to the end of that particular Distress Crayon, and I think it may have been scratching with where the actual medium had run out as well a little bit, so it sort of left some marks, but I sort of just kept on going, watered it out as much as possible, tried to rub it out with my, like, rub it as in rub the medium around a little bit, but it did still leave a bit of a sort of a mark that I wasn't overly happy with. But then I decided I would go with the Ecoline pen with some of the others as well. I wanted to add some different shapes in, not just have squares. So I'm now going in with the stamps from my Maker Mark stamp set, and I wanted the circles to sort of be a contrast to the rectangles, even though they were bumpy rectangles. So I went with the big circle first, and then I'm using the smaller circles. And as I was doing it, I thought, oh, it'd be nice to sort of add little bits around those frames to really make them even more of a feature. Don't know why I struggled there. And I'm using the Archival ink pad in the Vibrant Fuchsia, which will go over all those different mediums that are down there, and also means that if I want to add anything over the top afterwards, it won't move those lines either. I decided that to just bring that stamping out a little bit more, because at the moment everything on this page is in tones of pink. So I went with the Pigment pen from the Steadtler one, and just colouring in those little circles to start with. And then I decided to go in with the pencil to add, just not fully, but just sort of like a shadow around the edges of the bigger circles. And then to just add in a little bit of highlights, I was going to get out my white paint pen, but I thought, no, I've got this pink one here from Arrtx, I will put that on instead. It did sink into the mediums a little bit, so I was okay with that. It was fine, but if you wanted to make that a bit more sort of stand out, you could go back over it once it was dry. Now I'm using this stencil from Lemon Creation, back to square one, and I'm using the matte acrylic paint from IndigoBlu. Now, what the first little bit I did, I went in a bit too swirly with my brush. I didn't tap it enough, and I ended up going a little bit underneath the stencil. So after that, I made sure that I was actually dabbing my paint on rather than sort of swishing it on as I did with the first bit. Then I am removing the tape to give that lovely border, which I really do enjoy. And I had already stamped and cut out some of my Tranquil tulip stamps and found a sentiment, and I coloured them with alcohol markers, and then just added a little bit of white gel pen just to bring out the highlights. So there is a little bit of green in there, which I hope you'll forgive me, because obviously if you have flowers you can't have just pink everywhere. And then I just decided to glue them on, and then that was the end of the project. So thank you ever so much for watching today. Like I said before, if you want to catch up on any of the other colour studies, they are in a playlist on my actual YouTube channel page, if you want to go there to find those. And if you have enjoyed the video, do please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already subscribed and you would like to continue with me on this arty crafty journey, do please give that subscribe button a little push so that it will help YouTube know that my content is something that they should be pushing. So thank you ever so much, and until the next time, bye bye.